Good morning again from Recording Studio Oxford, Carl. And once again, it's a beautiful morning. The clouds are white and blue in the sky, and I'm missing my little boy. Now we return to another boy, little Toomai, who'd just been warned by Pedersen Sahib not to play in the Keddah of the elephants. Must I never go over there, Sahibs? Asked little Toomai with a big gasp. Yes, said Pedersen Sahib, smiled again, when thou see the elephants dance. That is the proper time. Come to me when thou hast seen the elephants dance, and then I will let thee go into all the Keddahs. There was another roar of laughter, for that is an old joke amongst elephant catchers, and just means never. There are great cleared flat places hidden far in the way of the forest that are called elephants' ballrooms, but even these are only found by accident, and no man has ever seen the elephants dance. When a driver boasts of his skill and bravery, the other drivers say, and when didst thou see the elephants dance? Kala Nag put little Toomai down and bowed to the earth again, and went away with his father and gave the little silver fuana piece to his mother, who was nursing his baby brother, and they were all put up on Kala Nag's back, and a line of grunting, squealing elephants rolled down the hill path to the plains. It was a very lively march on account of the new elephants, who have given trouble at every ford, and need coaxing or beating every other minute. Now big Toomai prodded Kala Nag spitefully, for he was very angry. But little Toomai was too happy to speak. Pedersen Sahib had noticed him and given him money, so he felt as a private soldier would fail if he had been called out of the ranks and praised by his commander-in-chief. What did Pedersen Sahib mean by the elephant dance? He said at last softly to his mother. Big Toomai heard him and grunted, that thou shouldst never be one of these hill buffaloes of trackers. That's what he meant. Or you in front, what is blocking the way? An Assamese driver, 2 or 3 elephants ahead, turned round angrily, crying, Bring up Kala Nag and knock this youngster of mine into good behaviour. Why should Pedersen Sahib have chosen me to go down with you donkeys of the rice fields? Lay your beast alongside Toomai, let him prod with his tusks. By all the gods of the hills, these new elephants are possessed, else they can smell their companions in the jungle. Kala Nag hit the new elephant in the ribs and knocked the wind out of him. As Big Toomai said, We have swept the hills of wild elephants at the last catch. It is only your carelessness in driving. Must I keep order along the whole line? Hear him, said the other driver. We have swept the hills. Ho, ho. You are very wise, you plains people. Anyone but a mudhead who never saw the jungle would know that the drives ended for the season. Therefore all the white elephants tonight will. But why should I waste wisdom on a river turtle? What will they do? Little Toomai called out. Oh, hey, little one, art thou there? Well, I will tell thee, for thou hast a cool head. They will dance, and it behooves thy father, who has swept all the hills of all the elephants, to double chain the pickets tonight. What talk is this? Said Big Toomai. For 40 years, father and son, we have tended the elephants, and we never heard such moonshine about dances. Yes, but a plainsman who lives in a hut knows only the 4 walls of his hut. Well, leave thy elephants unshackled tonight and see what comes. As for their dancing, I have seen the place. Where? Babri Bap. How many windings has the Dihang River? Here's another ford, and we must swim the cars. Stop still, you behind there. And in this way, talking and wrangling and splashing through the rivers, they made their first march to a sort of receiving camp for the new elephants. But they lost their tempers long before they got there. The elephants were chained by their hind legs to the big stumps of pickets, and extra ropes were fitted to the new elephants, and the fodder was piled before them, and the hill drivers went back to Pedersen Sahib through the afternoon light, telling the plains drivers to be extra careful that night, and laughing when the plains drivers asked the reason. Little Toomai attended to Kala Nag's supper, and as evening fell, wandered through the camp, unspeakably happy, in search of a tom-tom. When an Indian child's heart is full, he does not run about and make a noise in the regular fashion. He sits down to sort of revel all by himself. I imagine things have changed a bit since this story was written, and you know about that because of your games without Little Arjun. And little Toomai had been spoken to by Pedersen Sahib. If he had not found what he wanted, I believe he would have been ill. But the sweetmeat seller in camp lent him a little tom-tom, a drum beaten with the flat of the hand, and he sat down, cross-legged, before Kala Nag as the stars began to come out, the tom-tom in his lap, and he thumped, and he thumped, and he thumped. And the more he thought of the great honour that had been done to him, the more he thumped, all alone among the elephant fodder. There was no tune and no words, but the thumping made him happy. The new elephants strained at their ropes, and squealed and trumpeted from time to time, and he could hear his mother in the camp putting his small brother to sleep with an old song about the great god Shiv, who once told all the animals what they should eat. It is a very soothing lullaby, and the first verse says, Shiv, who poured the harvest and made the winds to blow, sitting at the doorways of their day long ago, gave to each his portion of food and toil and fate, to the king upon the guddy and to the beggar at the gate. All things made he, Shiva the preserver, Mahadeo, Mahadeo, he made all, thorn for the camel and fodder for the kine, and mother's heart for sleepy head, O little son of mine. That's a nice song. Little Toomai came in with a joyous tunka tunk at the end of each verse until he felt sleepy and stretched himself out on the fodder at Kala Nag's side. At last the elephants began to lie down, and one after the other, as is their custom, till only Kala Nag at the right of the line was left standing up, and he rocked slowly from side to side, his ears put forward to listen to the night wind as it blew very slowly across the hills. The air was full of all the night noises that, taken together, made one big silence. The click of one bamboo stem against another, the rustle of something alive in the undergrowth, the scratch and squawk of a half-awake bird. Birds are awake in the night much more often than we imagine, and the fall of water ever so far away. Little Toomai slept for some time, and when he woke it was brilliant moonshine, and Kala Nag was still standing up and his ears cocked. Little Toomai turned, rustled in the fodder, and watched the curve of his big back against the stars in heaven, and while he watched, he heard so far away that it sounded no more than a pinhole of noise pricked through the stillness, the hoot-toot of a wild elephant. All the elephants in the lines jumped off as they had been shot, and their grunts at last waked the sleeping mahouts, and they came out and drove in the picket pegs with big mallets, and tightened the ropes, and knotted till all was quiet. One new elephant had nearly grubbed up his picket, and Big Toomai took off Kala Nag's leg chain and shackled the elephant forefoot to hindfoot, but slipped a rope of grass string around Kala Nag's leg, and told him to remember that he was tied fast. He knew that he and his father and his grandfather had done the very same thing hundreds of times before. Kala Nag did not answer the order by gurgling, as he usually did. He stood still and looked out across the moonlight, his head raised a little, and his ears spread like fans up to the great folds of the Garo hills. "Tend him if he grows restless in the night," said Big Toomai to Little Toomai, and he went into the hut and slept. Little Toomai was just going to sleep, too, when he heard the choir string snap with a little bang, and Kala Nag rolled out of his pickets as slowly and as silently as a cloud rolls out of the mouth of a valley. Little Toomai pattered after him, barefooted, down the side of the road in the moonlight, calling under his breath, Kala Nag, take me with you, O Kala Nag." The elephant turned without a sound, took 3 strides back to the boy in the moonlight, put down his trunk, swung him up onto his neck, and almost before Little Toomai had settled his knees, had slipped into the forest. There was one blast of furious trumpeting from the lines, and then the silence shut down on everything, and Kala Nag began to move. Sometimes a tuft of high grass washed along his sides, as a wave washes along the sides of a ship, and sometimes a cluster of wild pepper vines would scrape his back, or a bamboo creak where his shoulder touched it. Between these times he moved absolutely without any sound, drifting through the thick Garo forest as though it had been smoke. It sounds strange that an elephant can move without making noise, but all wild things have that trick when they wish to. He was going uphill, but though Little Toomai watched the stars in the rifts of the trees, he could not tell in what direction. And then Kala Nag reached the crest of the ascent and stopped for a minute, and Little Toomai could see the tops of the trees lying all speckled and furry under the moonlight for miles and miles, and in the blue mist, a white mist over the river in the hollow. Toomai leaned forward and looked, and felt that the forest was awake below him, awake and alive and crowded. A big brown fruit-eating bat brushed past his ear. A porcupine's quills rattled in the thicket, and in the darkness between the tree stems he heard a hog bear digging hard in the moist, warm earth and snuffing as it digged. Then the branches closed over his head again, and Kala Nag began to go down into the valley, not quietly this time, but as a runaway gun goes down a street bank, in one rush. The huge limbs moved as steadily as pistons, 8 feet to each stride, and as the wrinkled skin of the elbow points rustled, the undergrowth on either side of him was ripped with a noise like a torn canvas, and saplings that he heaved away right and left with his shoulders sprang back again and banged him on the flank, and the great trails of creepers, all matted together, hung from his tusks as he threw his head from side to side and he ploughed out his pathway. Then Little Toomai laid himself down close to the great neck, lest a swinging bough should sweep him to the ground, and he wished he were back in the lines again. The grass began to get squashy, and Kala Nag's feet sucked and squelched as he put them down, and the night mist at the bottom of the valley chilled Little Toomai. There was a splash and a trample, and a rush of running water, and Kala Nag stood through the bed of a river, feeling his way at every step. Above the noise of the water, as it swirled away around the elephant's legs, Little Toomai could hear more splashing and some trumpeting both upstream and down, great grunts and angry snortings, and all the mist about him seemed to be full of rolling, wavy shadows. "Aye," he said half aloud, his teeth chattering, "the elephant folk out tonight. It is the dance then." Kala Nag swooshed out of the waters, blew his trunk clear, and began another climb. But this time he was not alone, and had not to make his path. That was made already, 6 feet wide in front of him, where the bent jungle grass was trying to recover itself and stand up. Many elephants must have gone that way, only a few minutes before. Little Toomai looked back, and behind him a great wild tusker, with his little pig's eyes glowing like hot coals, was lifting himself out of the misty river. Then the trees closed up again, and they went up, on and up, with trumpetings and crashings, and the sound of breaking branches on either side of them. At last Kala Nag stood still between two tree trunks at the very top of the hill. They were part of a circle of trees that grew round an irregular space of some 3 or 4 acres, and in all that space, as little Toomai could see, the ground had been trampled down as hard as a brick floor. Some trees grew in the centre of the clearing, but their bark was rubbed away, and the white wood beneath showed all shiny and polished the patches of moonlight. There were creepers hanging down from the upper branches, and the bells of flowers in the creepers, great waxy white things like convolvul, so it says, hanging fast asleep. Within the limits of the clearing there was not a single blade of green, nothing but the trampled earth. The moonlight showed it all iron grey, except where some elephants stood upon it, and their shadows were inky black. Toomai looked, holding his breath, with his eyes starting out of his head, and as he looked, more and more of the elephants swung out of the open from between the tree trunks. Little Toomai could only count up to 10, and he counted again and again on his fingers until he lost count of the tens, and his head began to swim. Outside the clearing, he could hear them crashing in the undergrowth as they walked their way up the hillside, but as soon as they moved within the circle of the tree trunk, they moved like ghosts. So little Toomai has seen what neither his father nor his grandfather nor his great-grandfather had seen. He's come to the place where the elephants dance. We will see the rest of this story tomorrow, Carl. Love you to pieces.